nurses, and the children have worked very long and very hard to put on this production that you will see tonight. There may be a few missing people, so those people that are missing, their parts will be read by Mrs. Roche. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Just a little brief bits here before we start. First of all, scenery-wise, I want you to use a great deal of imagination. That is a stone wall with wood beams, okay? This is the inside of Fagin's den. For those of you who don't know the story, Fagin is the crafty old gentleman who teaches young children how to pickpocket so that they can support him, and he in turn takes care of them. Work for him when he gets into trouble at the workhouse. The rest of the story, oh, and that's our famous bridge over the Thames River.
Good evening. We have the play based on the Charles Dickens novel, Oliver Twist. The story opens in the workhouse where the orphaned boys are anxiously contemplating their next meal.
I'm so hungry. I bet it'll be porridge again.
Mr. Bumble, the workhouse headmaster, and Miss Corney, the workhouse matron, walk into the room, and all the boys stand at attention as they know they must. They eye Mr. Bumble fearfully and wait for him to strike his mace on the floor. When he does, they file slowly to the vats of porridge, receive one ladleful, and return to their seats. And when they wait patiently, and when Mr. Bumble again strikes the mace on the floor, they begin to eat.
It doesn't take long for the food to disappear, for the boys are nearly starved. Suddenly, one of the boys, Oliver, walks slowly to the vat. He has lost the jar of straws and has to ask Mr. Bumble for more food. When he makes his request, Mr. Bumble goes into a furious rage and calls for his helpers to seize Oliver and lock him up.
Mr. Bumble and Widow Corney decide that Oliver is a troublemaker and decide to sell him for work to the highest bidder.
His few belongings are tied into a bundle, and he is led into the street by Mr. Bumble, who walks from business to business trying to sell him. Eventually, Mr. Sowerberry, an undertaker, consents to take Oliver on a trial basis after Mr. Bumble assures him that he will eat little and work hard. At first, things worked out well. Mr. Bumble used Oliver to carry a banner in funeral processions, as well as helping out with the business establishment.
Noah Claypole, a bully who also works for Mr. Sowerberry, obviously jealous of the good treatment Oliver is getting, instigates a fight by taunting him about his mother and calling him names. When Oliver retaliates, he has to be separated from Noah by Mrs. Sowerberry and her children. Oliver is blamed for the incident and sent to the basement in the coffin room with the food in the dog's bowl for his supper. He thinks about how nice it would be to have a real home and someone to care for him, and wonders if this will ever happen.
Oliver goes sadly to the window to look out. As he leans against the frame, he finds that it is loose. He works it free, gathers his belongings.
After several days of walking and hitching rides on the back of horse-pulled carts, Oliver finds himself in the city of London, alone, hungry, and friendless. While looking around at the many activities going on, he is observed by Jack Dawkins, a boy about 4 years older, who is referred to by his friends as the Artful Dodger. Dodger, who is outlandishly dressed, walks up to Oliver and introduces himself. He gives Oliver an apple and offers to introduce him to his boss, Fagin, who will give him a job and a place to sleep.
Oliver considers himself very lucky to have found such a friend as Dodger and follows him to Fagin's den. When introduced to Fagin and the boys, he is warmly welcomed with a song.
Consider yourself at home. Consider yourself one of the family. We've taken you so strong. It's clear we're going to get along. Consider yourself well in. Consider yourself part of the furniture. There isn't a lot to spare. Who cares? Whatever we got for sure.
If it should happen to be, we should see some harder days. And
gentleman actually runs a school for young pickpockets. They steal from him in return for room and board and some spending money.
Once the boys are bedded down for the night, Fagin brings out a treasure chest from his secret hiding place. He looks at each and admires its beauty. He has collected this treasure as insurance for his old age.
The next morning, Nancy and Bet come to visit. Both are involved in Fagin's business. They also work as waitresses in the local tavern. Nancy is the girlfriend of Bill Sykes, a crook who is feared and hated by everyone. When she meets Oliver, she notices right away that he is different from the others, that he is a young gentleman.
Nancy and Dodger use their talents to tell and show how high-class ladies and gentlemen treat each other. The other boys, including Oliver, join in.
Within a few days, Oliver is sent off into the streets with Dodger to observe how successful pickpocketing is accomplished.
Outside a bookstore, Dodger skillfully removes a wallet from a wealthy gentleman's pocket. Almost instantly, the man realizes his wallet is missing as he reaches to pay for a purchase.
Oliver hesitates, gathers his wits, and runs. He is vowed to be a thief, captured, and taken to a magistrate for trial.
Meanwhile, Nancy's entertaining her customers with a rousing song. Everyone joins in as they beat time and sing harmony.
Signs of
inform Fagin, Sykes, and Nancy of Oliver's capture. He also relates that during the court trial, the bookseller who observed and the wealthy victim, Mr. Brownlow, has taken Oliver to live with him.
Both Sykes and Fagin realized that Oliver made
An inheritance for a child whose name was Oliver.
Mr. Bumble and Widow Corney, in their greed, schemed to reclaim Oliver and thereby inherit his fortune for themselves. But Mr. Brownlow foils their plot when he becomes incensed over their treatment and sale of Oliver and threatens to have both of them fired from their positions. Upon opening the locket, Mr. Brownlow discovers that it contains a picture of his daughter Agnes. That means he's Oliver's grandfather.
Later in the day, Nancy appears at Mr. Brownlow's residence and promises to bring Oliver to him at midnight on the London Bridge.
As Nancy hurries Oliver to the appointed meeting, Bill Sykes follows and kills her. Mr. Brownlow arrives just in time to see Sykes disappear with Oliver.
As an angry crowd searches for Sykes, it batters in the door of Fagin's den, where Sykes has taken Oliver. Sykes pulls his hostage onto the roof in a desperate attempt to escape. Sykes is discovered by the crowd, is shot, and falls to his death.
His pickpockets have been alerted and have managed to run to safety. The crowd emerges from Fagin's den, excitedly showing off his chest of precious jewels that it has uncovered. Oliver's grandfather, Mr. Brownlow, rescues Oliver.
Alone and contemplating his future, once again he says,
Can someone change? It's possible. Maybe it's strange. It's possible. My dearest companions and treasures, I've left them behind. I'll turn a leaf over and who knows what I may find.
Before he exits, he turns, waves, and then disappears.
Congratulations, you guys were terrific. You did us proud. The school, myself, Sister Audrey, and all the people in the audience. Thanks for a great job. And thank you for coming, a wonderful audience.